Hi chicos, my name is Soshi and I'm presenting a little lesson that I've actually taught for one of my classes. I teach a intermediate English speaking class. They're from Bogota, Colombia, and my main goal in my lesson is always to spark conversation, to get these students to talk, to converse with not just me, but with each other, to practice their conversation with each other and other people so that when they go into their corporate world or their daily life and they use English, it's very free flowing. It goes very well the way they talk. They don't struggle with it, and their big goal is to be able to express themselves almost unsimilar to how they express themselves in Spanish, where they are in Bogota, but be able to do it in English, which is the goal, right? And I'll mention again, they are intermediate English speakers, and they're very fluent. They can hold big conversations, but like I said, my job is to push them to converse to the point where they get to that word. They go, Maestra, how do they say this? Or Mrs. Teacher, how do you say this? So this is one of the lessons I've taught. This is week 3, day 2, and let's get started. Here we go. And every lesson that I teach has a topic, and that topic usually is something controversial or something that makes them wonder and go, "Oh, that's not fair," or "Oh, that's something happening to me." So here we go. So this one is cities' effect on our health, talking about and this is how I usually introduce this. So today we're talking about cities' effect on our health. So if you haven't heard about many times living in the city is hard on us. It can affect our mental health, our physical health. We're not meant to be, many times through research, it has shown that we're not meant to live in cities. They're overwhelming, they're overbearing. Um, we're just surrounded by lots of people, lots of buildings, lots of urbanization that has caused us negative effects on our health, especially our mental health. If you don't know what mental health is the health that we have in our own brain, in our own heart, and how we feel and how we let things affect us. So here we go. And then I usually go into a warm up, just a quick question to get them into the conversation. Do you think cities affect our health? And because they just came in, I will pick on people and I would say, let's see, Mariana, do you think that cities affect our health? And by that I mean, do you think that it's easier for us to live in cities or to live, for example, in a place away from the city? And then it usually gets them to start talking and they get really engaged really fast because they go, no, humans aren't supposed to live in the city. We already had this conversation, and one of the big topics that someone brought up during the warm-up was I hate living in the city. I liked it when I lived in the they call it pueblo, the village, because I didn't have to deal with all these people. I can hear everyone while I sleep. So that's one of the big goals I have is to get them to keep talking where they just hold a conversation. Then we proceed to do a small reading because many times they don't know a lot about this topic, but they're passionate about it, or they already heard about it through the news, through just daily talk. So the readings I do are very short. For example, this one is only 3 pages, but there's large spaces and gaps between each paragraph. Every student gets to read one paragraph, and I alternate depending on how many students you have. We'll read it. And I usually stop. I put enough paragraphs on each page to allow time to stop and talk about it. I usually stop after we read and give them, oh, I'm going to give you a minute. Read it if you need to read it again. Ask me questions if you need to ask me again. And they'll usually ask something like, oh, Mrs., what is cardiovascular disease? Oh, cardiovascular disease is heart health, like your heart and the diseases it can have and when you feel sick due to your heart, and then I'll usually translate it into Spanish and they go, oh, the corazón and this and that. Okay, and then we'll do our readings and then we have a comprehension. So what did we just read about? What do we know? What did we learn? For example, the first one is, what are some common sources of noise pollution in urban areas? We talk about that. oh, what class is it? Or usually someone unmutes himself or raises their hand and says, oh, it's this. And what this really does is to make sure students are understanding the text, because if I get to this page and they say, oh, I don't know what this is, Mrs., then I have to go, oh, my students didn't really understand what I was saying. I should go back and we should reread that part, or we should talk about it more. So usually here I'd say, for example, what are some common sources of noise pollution in urban areas? Remember, noise pollution is a lot of sound in a city to the point where it can be very negative and it could be almost like this big cloud over the city where you just can't stop hearing noise, right? Urban areas, remember, is where there's lots of cities, there's lots of streets. It's usually in the city, it's when something becomes a city. So, comprehension. After our reading, then we usually move into some vocabulary. Usually, I pick words from the text that they don't know, or they may be unfamiliar with, or that I want them to learn to be able to use in conversation when they leave the classroom. Urbanization, urbanization is one big word that I've heard in my day-to-day life, and they didn't know. So we talked about it, and I had to explain it a little bit. I usually go, oh, okay. I usually, what I do is I read the word. For example, I'll say, urbanization. Carlos, can you please read the definition? And then I keep going. I make sure that the students get to engage with each other as much as possible. And one way to do that is getting them to read the definitions and the words and letting them stumble over the words. And I'll usually let them read and then they'll ask questions. And I always give them a minute after to ask questions because sometimes they know the word, but they don't know the words defining the vocab word. So I'll usually define it for them or talk about it. And this is one of the more preferred parts of the lesson for students because they get to learn new words and they like new words. Next part is vocabulary practice. I don't usually do fill in the blanks because they can be boring, but when it's a Wednesday during the week and I already know everyone's kind of tired, they kind of just want an activity to reassure them on their vocab and move on. So this one's pretty simple. They have a sentence, they fill it in. What I usually do is I pick a person for each question, they read it, and they tell me what they think goes in there. If they get it wrong, I usually say, I want you to read that again and put that word in there. Does that sound right? They usually say, no, that doesn't sound right. And then they'll usually say, oh, no, it's noise pollution or it's mental health. And then they usually fix their mistake. Um, yes, I don't, if I have a class, let's say sometimes my classes can range from 7 to 2 people. I will only do 2 each. So this is a very diverse way of being able to increase or decrease how many practices you do with each student. Okay, and then we usually go on to a debate where we talk about what is going on. And then this is what really gets them to converse and talk back and forth. And then I ask them a question, they talk, someone disagrees, someone responds, so on and so forth. And then I always do a wrap up. Sometimes it's a fun question to wrap it up. Sometimes it's something that goes into deeper about the reading and the debate. That's something I knew that was going to come up later. And then we say, good job, have a good day. So this is a lesson I will teach about, and I want to say it can go from 45 to 50 minutes. It's very fast paced. These students are, like I said, intermediate, and it's very fun for them because they get bored when the class says, repeat this, say this. No, 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 no. This is the topic we're talking about. Now tell me what you know, tell me what you learn, and tell me what you think. So that's one of the classes, for example, but they all usually they all follow the same structure, different topics and different practices, of course. But thank you for listening to my my lesson and have a nice day.